What's up, guys? How's it going? Little Wednesday Linc. Like we said, it's kind of a 50-50. Sometimes we have it in the evening, sometimes a little more middle of the day, a little earlier afternoon action. But Thomas, how's it going?
Going well, right? We are 8 days from the NFL draft. Felt like last week we were, a month and a half from the NFL draft, and now we're exactly 8 days, which is crazy because things are starting to ramp up, especially at the top of the draft, Josh. I'm sure we'll talk about it. And Dallas Goedert keeps appearing in our thumbnails because Dallas Goedert keeps appearing in the news, right? We're going to get into, obviously, the New York Giants reportedly interested in Dallas Goedert, or they've sniffed around. And so,
Yep.
there's stuff going on. We still, 8 days is still a long time for things to change. We'll cover things as they happen. But it does feel like the draft is really starting to take shape. And I think Philadelphia has really revealed their plan to us. And barring some surprises, I think we kind of know what's going to go down relatively. We don't know exactly who, but at number 32
Sure.
overall.
Yes. Yeah. There's a better ideas. You go through like the different mock drafts and potential candidates. You look at the top 30 visits. As always, shout out to Anthony DeBona because the incredible work between the relative athletic score, the top 30 visit. That's the formula if you want to be picked by the Eagles as of the last couple years. Now, maybe
Yeah.
Howie surprises people. It's like, hey, this guy didn't come in for a top 30 visit, and you actually take that player. But I'm kind of putting together, my own internal list. I'm sure that we've all looked at that and going, okay, this is probably likely here. You go with how far does this certain player fall? Will they
Yeah.
draft that guy? Initially, I was like very, very much on board of saying like, okay, yeah, you could possibly trade back. You get a couple more picks or selections in this draft. But then the more that you look at it and you even hear Howie Roseman talking about it in the press conference yesterday, of we sometimes or get aggressive or very often get aggressive, but we have the luxury of doing that, and also we don't have 32 first round grades, which is totally understandable, but not 32 first round grades, which means there's a possibility that you could not have a single first rounder that's available to you at a certain point, depending on however their board falls.
Yeah.
Or do they go like, all right, hey, there's one left, there's say we're at pick 23, there's one first rounder left, dude. Is that the point where Howie trades up? So I kind of, I don't know. I like I said, I initially was thinking a trade back scenario because there's a couple different guys, and that's the difficulty of the mock draft simulators, because the mock draft simulators make us think, oh no, we can wait, we can take whoever we want to, whoever we need to later.
Yeah.
But that's not real world, and so I'm kind of leaning towards possibility of a trade up scenario now, more than the trade back, but I guess we'll see.
I think the Eagles, behind the scenes of the draft last year, kind of showcasing us what round one and round two look like, is exactly how it's going to go down for round one, especially with the second round trade up for Cooper DeJean. In that behind the scenes, people can go watch on the Eagles YouTube channel. Howie's talking to Jeffrey Lurie, and they clearly want Cooper DeJean. They don't think they're going to be able to get ahead of a team that they have scouted to predictably, want to get Cooper DeJean. So when the Rams are there and the Rams don't take DeJean, then Howie Roseman pulls the trigger and he makes the trade. He would not have done it, obviously, if the Rams would have taken Cooper DeJean. And like you just said, that's how round one is going to go. As we get closer to the 20s, really, to me, it's like from 20 on. I don't think Philadelphia trades up to the teens. It would take, one, a lot of overall draft capital, and two, some sort of really crazy special player that they are like, this is the next, all-world tight end, edge rusher, cornerback, whatever you want to go ahead and pick. So I say you get to 20, and then it's just a matter of who is left on that big board. And if that person can get to 24 and then 25, that's when Howie Roseman, I think, starts picking up the phone and calling everybody else in line and saying, hey, what does it take to go from 32 to 26, 32 to 27? That's a very reasonable jump, maybe throwing a third-round draft pick in 2026, and then you go get the guy that you want. But I do think trading back is still very much in play because, as you said, Howie said it himself, there are not 32 first-round draft picks on the Eagles board in the first round. And if we get to 25 and all the Birds guys are gone, I'm waiting for that phone call from the Cleveland Browns, the New York Giants, potentially the New Orleans Saints. Whoever doesn't get Shedeur Sanders in round one, Josh, of the quarterback-needy teams, which we don't think the Browns or Giants are going to take him at 2 or 3, they're going to have to come back into the first round, maybe at 32, like the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson in 2018, for a Jackson Dart or a Jalen Milroe. One of these guys that we don't see as a first-rounder, but they panic and have to go ahead and move up. And so, I just gave you two scenarios that obviously could happen. You also just stay put at 32 and take whoever you think is the best available. But it does feel like we're getting to that point where it's going to be interesting once 20 gets on the board, because that's when the Eagles can start to strike.
Yes. Yeah. I was trying to find that clip, which I did eventually, that you were referencing, obviously the Cooper DeJean. But they played out all sorts of scenarios here, and that's
Yes.
the luxury of like there's very few elements, where you could go, okay, what is a team building prospect look like, or
Right.
what is a general manager prospect? They're essentially running mock draft. Like, so what a lot of people here in the chat are doing, consecutively over these last couple of days, it just run a million different scenarios. Okay, hey, so-and-so's off the
Yeah.
board now. Now what do we do? Where do we pivot toward? Who's the next guy on our board? How long can we wait? Do we need to trade up in this scenario? And you still never know, because draft night it's full of mysteries, and it's the human
It is.
error, and teams will reach, like, I'm curious to see how far does it go before we go, oh, there, that's it. Okay. Did not expect that player to go, but some team is reaching for it, and then he just totally sets off the rest of the draft. But all things considered, yeah, you're trying to be as prepared as possible. To trade up, you go get a guy that you can. I'd be curious, but like I say, there's so many different guys out there. Reminder, of course, because Thomas and I will be streaming for the first couple nights of the draft, so come hang out with us. We got some crazy giveaways, fun, exciting time, cool draft night, announcing the picks, and some cool stuff planned. We'll maybe tease it a little bit towards the very end of the stream here, but some very cool things planned. We'll just say that. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, no, go ahead, and then I'll ask my question. Mine is unrelated. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, Surfer was saying, love the show, guys, but Shador is not sliding. And then also for a couple of the super chats here, before we get into that one, Harry with a 5, thoughts on Lathan Ransom for the replace, or I guess similar to CJGJ, but thoughts on him maybe to replace. Does he get the starter opportunity? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about you personally. Like, I'm not opposed to it necessarily, but like every time that I look at safety, I know Malachi Starks, and both of us have covered it on the last couple videos, and it's the natural Philly dog inclination. Do you take a first round, or do you draft a first rounder for the first time?
Yeah.
Philly's never done that for a safety, but you probably have to in the first round. You have other Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State as a possibility there, but those are earlier. I think if you get later into, because Lathan Rand's probably talking about like a 3rd round, 4th round selection for him.
I was looking it up. He's the 10th safety prospect on ESPN right now.
So you got time to wait. I guess I kind of go back and forth, because like he could turn out to something, but I also think to myself, we haven't had enough from Sidney Brown yet. So do I say go ahead and draft like another 3rd round, 4th round safety, maybe see how he pans out, or do you go the route of, because Howie even said in the press conference yesterday, like, there's going to be a lot of other free agent moves. Now, granted, a lot of undrafted free agents, but could be some other free agents. So is that something where you get your veteran safety, whether it's going to be a Justin Simmons or just, somebody who's there to kind of facilitate? But I don't know. I don't know if you go with like a multiple of a selection. For me, and this is just my personal opinion, so I totally understand it. If people are all about Lathan Ransom, draft him. He's the guy. That's fine. But for me, it's like if you want to draft youth and say we don't have our starter, which would tell you they don't believe in Sidney Brown as much if they were to draft that early. But if you don't, then I think you got to go and draft early and take a like Malachi Starks, Xavier Watts, Kevin. On a draw blank now. I just said it. Penn State. Winston. Draft someone earlier, because otherwise you wait till a 3rd round, a 4th round, like I say, and then it's like, well, you don't know how this guy's going to pan out. He's a rookie. You still don't know necessarily about Sidney Brown. He's been injured, trying to rehab and all that other stuff. So, I don't know. Long-winded answer. I don't hate it, don't love it. Kind of just in between.
Yeah, safeties to me, the most obvious need so far in this football team. But I think if they were to wait until the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round, because I think they will take a safety if it's not in the 1st round at some point, just for overall depth purposes. But if they do wait, let's say past round 2, so a 3rd round guy like a Latham, or they were to wait, much later for a guy in a 5th, 6th, or 7th round, that would tell me either they love Sidney Brown or Justin Simmons. And Justin Simmons continues to kind of be this wild card where Philadelphia could go into this draft and go, Malachi Starks is there at 32. I don't think he will be, but let's say he was. We're going to go edge rusher instead, and then they get a safety in, the 6th round, and then we all come after the draft and go, whoa, they must love Sidney Brown. And then a week later or a month later, they sign Justin Simmons. So I do agree with your central argument of if you need a safety, if they have really sat down in their war room and said, number one need in this draft is safety. We have got to come out of the first round, or got to come out of this draft with a safety, then just spend it on a first rounder. Go get Nick Emenwari, go get Malachi Starks, whoever you think is a plug-and-play ready safety in day one, or who Vic Fangio thinks is plug-and-play ready, that's who you go ahead and get. So I would agree.
Nick Emenwari would be great. I've been a little bit slightly above, for me personally. Now, we'll see, but slightly above Malachi Starks. I know some people are going like, oh, no, you need to go get Malachi Starks, and that's fair. We can agree to disagree for those people. Matt here with the 2 does say we need to get Starks at all cost. Dude's a stud. He's a stud, but, maybe not quite above that element. There would be some that would argue, because we did the whole RAS and top 30 visit, as we mentioned at the top of the show. Not very athletic in terms of the testing.
In terms of the testing,
I test, you look, see plays being made and staying with other players. So not every player translates that way, but the vast majority, especially the way the Eagles look at it, you go, that's not as likely that they would go make a move. But then the counter argument is, but he's a Georgia Bulldog. So
right.
I mean, you kind of like automatically put them higher on that tier because you assume that Howie's going to be interested.
Which, by the way, while you mentioned that, I was just looking up. So Mel Kiper has a 3-round mock draft just to show people the top 2 safeties being Emenwari and Starks, where we think that they're going to go. Emenwari, every single mock I've seen, he's not gotten past like 22, right? So right now, Mel Kiper has him 19 to the Bucks. The Bucks are in need of a safety. Really, they need help everywhere on defense. But if you want Emenwari, which I think most Eagle fans would love because of the athleticism, the crazy combine, you're really going up. You'd have to fall to 23 or 24, and then you pull the trigger. You're not going up to 19. It's too big of a jump, in my opinion. Whereas Malachi Starks, I keep seeing him, at least on the most recent McShay mock, he's 27. So he's a lot more likely to be either a realistic trade up because 32 to 27 is so small, or he sneaks past 27 and is there at 32. So just when we talk about safeties, and really when we talk about players in general, where they're at in the first round really matters in terms of availability for Philadelphia. Because a guy like Mike Green out of Marshall, who I did a show on I think last week, love him as an edge rusher. I know he has, the kind of the questionable past, despite lack of he has allegations of stuff, but not necessarily any sort of police report filing. And so it's a he said, she said. Don't really understand the full situation. But he's a guy Philly would love, but no mock draft has him getting past like 16. And so you start to kind of move these things around where if Mike Green were to fall and he gets into, the 22 range, is that the kind of gap that Philadelphia would be willing to move up for a guy they love, or did they sit tight and take a Walter Nolan, because he's there at 32 or somebody else? So when we talk about first rounders, it's always so interesting to me because especially in this draft, there seems to be a big giant cloud around pick 15 to pick 32 with all these players where they could either go 15 or 32. We just don't really know where they're going to be. That's what makes draft night very interesting.
Yeah, it's all over the place. It feels like maybe it's recency bias, but it does feel like this is one of those drafts that there's more of that all over the place, like randomness that could occur because of like you get one projection of a mock draft that the dude is, as you're saying, they're 15, and then another one where he's out of the first round even, and so it just flips so many different times where okay, we'll see how it plays out, but you have it all over the place. If I will say, you mentioned Walter Nolan, if Walter Nolan is there and available at 32, then you don't have a decision to be made. You're just like, all right, hey, let's run that card up there and take Walter Nolan, but that's still one of those similar. I've seen him at 32. I've seen him mocked up as high as like in the teens for Walter Nolan. So, there's so many different guys. I keep going back to like the last 2 drafts for sure, 3 drafts. I mean, depending on, but at least the last 2 drafts, you've had guys who have fallen just right into Philly's lap, fallen far enough. Multiple guys even. You look at Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. You did trade up.
DeJean's a big one.
Traded up to get him in the second round, who's a lot of teams' first round, or at least the Eagles' first round grades. So, you get both guys like that. Can it happen again? Can it happen again in a draft where you have a player that you're like, oh yeah, there's our first round, grade on someone, and we either don't have to trade up much or don't have to trade up at all. They just sit there at 32. It feels like, even though it's not like a crazy difference in picking like perspective or like where they are in the draft, 32 is one of those that feels like it's too far back to not have to trade up just a little bit, even if it's just a little bit up there, like 3-4 picks, and go get your guy.
But well, while I'm talking, bring up Andy DeBonis if you can.
Hmm.
His top 30 tracker, and let me know whenever you got it up on the screen. Because as we say almost every single time on my show, I'm sure you say it on your show as well. Top 30 visits do matter. Can Philadelphia take somebody who didn't visit Philadelphia for a top 30 visit? 100%. I think we're still waiting on a couple. The official top 30 visits are over. You can't have any more. I
Hmm.
think the deadline was today, but we don't have total of 30 visits, and so we're waiting on the reports of who came this weekend and who came yesterday, and so we're still waiting, right? Things can
Yep.
change. But when you look at Andy DeBona's draft tracker or top 30 visit tracker, to me, it just screams trade back for one main reason. Two surefire first-round draft picks have visited Philadelphia. Malachi Starks and then Donovan Ezeiruaku, the edge rusher from Boston College. The rest of these, I think you got on the
Yep.
screen,
There we
are
go.
shaded in light blue here. These are all second-rounders. These are all consensus second-rounders. I mean, Josh Connerly, Maxwell Hairston, I've seen him mocked to round one, Josh, but I would agree. I think he's a round two guy. Look at them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 second-round projected draft picks that come to Philadelphia versus 2 projected first-rounders. And Malachi Starks is a guaranteed first-rounder. I think Ezeiruaku is as well. That to me is the most interesting part of this entire chart because
Hmm.
this tells us that Philadelphia is going to make sure they've done their due diligence on a bunch of guys who are guaranteed to be there in round 2, either because they have a higher draft grade on them and will take them at 32, or because they're going to trade back and get multiple picks in the second round and go ahead and get multiple of these guys. So this tracker, unless we start to see the final, 4 or 5 top 30 visits, we don't know yet, are all
Hmm.
guaranteed first rounders. They bring in a Mike Green, they bring in a Walter Nolan. It's just interesting that if they were to trade up, they're not going to have met with the guy. And, it just seems like it goes counter whatever Philadelphia has done the past couple of years. Because Quinyon Mitchell, right? They had met with Quinyon Mitchell.
Hmm.
They felt very comfortable with Quinyon Mitchell. He fell, and they took him. But they had met with him before. Walter Nolan, if he falls to 32, do they need a meeting with him to go ahead and pull the trigger? No. But you would at least think if they had the idea that a guy like Nolan was going to be able to fall, potentially they would have at least had him in the Philly. I don't know. It's an interesting
It
chart to
does.
me that I think tells a lot so far about the upcoming draft.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely. And I'm trying to put the Howie cap on. Like, all right, what is he seeing here? What is he doing? What is he setting up for a
Right.
potential move? And I could see it both ways of like, does he trade back? He gets some more picks and go get him
Yeah.
multiple guys in that range, or there's so many selections that he has in the next 2 drafts. He's got 20 of them, so there's
That's
12
true
next
too.
year. Do you just
Yeah.
look at it and go, okay, you know what? First round, we wait until about 25. If one of our guys is still available, okay, we're going to trade up about then, take our player. Then you're saying, okay, we pick at 64, but again, we're looking at the list of names there. There is so many names at that point where
There's a lot.
40, 45, 60 through 100 really? I mean, you got like 8 different guys there. So I could see it where it's like multiple. You trade up a couple different times within the first 2 days and next thing you know, you're like, "Hey, we took 3, maybe even 4 guys within the top 80." Like it's
Yeah.
not out of the question. Now, sure, you have to give up some draft capital, but it's like at the end of the day, we've mentioned a couple different times, there's only so many guys that you can, I think, like confidently draft and say, okay, they've got a very legit chance to not only make the roster, but, make
Yeah.
some moves and actually do some things that'll contribute to the team. Otherwise, like, cool, we'll come away from the draft and say, hey, we just drafted 12 players. Like the 12 aren't going to make the roster. They're just, you drafted them to then eventually, practice squad or move on to another team. So, it's interesting because there's so many visits there that it's like how he's almost prepared every time that I do a mock draft. It's like I go through trying to use like, okay, here's the top 30 visits. And I can't have enough. I'll just say this. It's almost impossible for me to have too many picks from like that 60 to 100 range because you see that there's so many guys that
Yeah.
are at that
Yeah.
point that you're like, okay, well, I can get my tight end there. There's almost every offensive line prospect is in that range. So, okay,
A
if I'm going to
lot.
take an offensive lineman, probably take him at that point. You look at some edge, Oladejo ends up dropping quite a bit whenever you did mock drafts there. Is he 68? Is he 90? But somewhere in that range. But there's just so many different guys. So it is the fascinating part, again, of the draft. No one really knows. But you do get glimpses, as you were talking about, within the visits, at least for the Eagles, because there are teams, as I think people know, in case not, but like the Rams or the Jaguars that don't put a preference on top 30 visits, nor do they really do those with bringing in players. So
Yeah.
it's each team, to each their own.
Well, and one more thing here, I think, and then we at least need to touch on the Dallas Goedert news that kind of came out
Yes.
yesterday with the New York Giants and stuff. Quarterbacks are always the position group to keep an eye on, and we know Cam Ward is going one. He said yesterday that he thinks Calvin Ridley is better than AJ Brown. That's like the guarantee tell you right there that he's going to be the number 1 overall draft pick from the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
There's zero debate there. We know Shador goes in round 1 as well. I am convinced that Jackson Dart is going to go in round 1. I think Jalen Milroe and Tyler Shuck are the other 2 guys to really keep an eye on at the end of night 1. And neither of them deserve to go in round 1, respectively. I mean, they're not first-round caliber quarterbacks, but you have a scenario where if the Browns and Giants and Pittsburgh Steelers do not get a quarterback with their first-round draft pick, I think Pittsburgh's 21 or 22. Obviously, the Browns and Giants are 2 and 3. And so let's say Shador's a Saint at 9, or the Saints move up to 6, and then, whatever. So let's just say Shador's a Saint. That's 3 teams. Or, I mean, heck, the Saints don't get Shador, the Giants do, and so then you still have 3 teams because the Saints need a quarterback. I really see a scenario where those 3 teams are battling it out to move up for Dart, and then the second that one of them gets Jackson Dart, the other 2 teams are going to panic. And Tyler Shuck right now, Josh, is vaulting up draft boards. I mean, he, for as much as Jackson Dart was going up draft boards the past month, it seems like since this past weekend, this kid out of Louisville is like everyone's favorite quarterback. Kyle McCord is also getting a lot of run right now. I don't see him as being a first-round draft pick, but
Yeah.
Shuck, I think, could be somebody, along with Milroe, that a team panics on, overdrafts, and moves up into round 1, and then reshuffles the entire draft board, because as soon as 2 other quarterbacks go after the initial 2, that's 2 more players, potentially defensively, that could move back and get closer to Philadelphia.
Always a possibility. I mean, especially you see it almost every year, but always a possibility with quarterbacks because of the value of the position. So yeah, you got a player. Team's like, hey, maybe not. We didn't take our guy early, like you're talking about, but there's a chance here. Do we just risk it, go for it? And it wouldn't be surprising. Let's just say that.
And by the way, just in terms of Kuiper's mock draft, Cleveland Browns trade up with Washington at 29. They take Jackson Dart. I believe that Shuck goes 34 overall to the Giants, which is, I mean, that's right there. I mean, that's 2 picks after Philadelphia. And then Milroe would go, let's see, Jalen Milroe goes 68 with the Steelers. So, further back than into the first round. But Dart at 29, you're telling me that these other teams, like a Brown or a Giants, if Dart were to go 29, wouldn't panic there and be like, oh my gosh, one of us needs to get Tyler Shuck or get Jalen Milroe. It could get really interesting with a lot more quarterbacks than any of us would even consider based on this class in round 1.
Yeah, it's not of what it has been in past years, but still, right. It's just a quarterback like that. That's what it is. Even if you don't believe in it, there's always a couple teams, quarterback needy teams, because it's hard and difficult, and there's that like dangling carrot of like, we could just find the one guy, like we just strike gold once. If we could
Lamar
just get
Jackson.
Fortunate, lucky, right? Yeah, just people miss on it, or people don't realize there he is. That might be the player. So yeah, there'll be a team or 2 that'll take a risk, maybe an unnecessary risk in this one, but perhaps it does. It helps out.
It's a risk for sure.
You're sitting better. So
yep.
Harry was mentioning, yes, I think in one of Josh's mock drafts we trade the Colts. That was Anthony DeBona's idea, but you trade the Colts before you even start the mock draft. But if you do PFF's mock draft, you could trade the 4th round pick of the Colts for Dallas Goedert, and you get a little extra ammunition there. So, I mean, connection with Steichen. Just go ahead and do that and say, like, why not, right? You just have a little extra firepower if that's the range that we're looking at in the draft earlier. Never totally unrealistic possibility, but I think it'll be in the draft. Like at some point in the draft, once you start going in the draft, then we'll say, okay, start to see how things shake out. There's some other trade potential teams that maybe are going, okay, you know what, now we can take advantage and go ahead and get Goddard. If he's traded. So
well, let's just say this. So the report yesterday was obviously that the New York Giants, according to one Giant insider, have called Philadelphia. Now, obviously, you see that and you freak out. The Giants want to trade for Dallas Goedert. Doesn't mean that. It just means somebody inside the Giants front office told the reporter, we sniffed around Goddard. They probably are just seeing what the price is right now and then seeing if it changes the closer you get to the NFL draft. And so the Giants at least know what Howie's asking price is. Now, probably higher if you want to trade Dallas Goedert in the division. Not something Philadelphia likes to do historically, especially recently. Probably an AFC team could get him, for a little bit cheaper. But simple question, Josh. Dallas Goedert gets traded before the draft, night 1, day 2 or 3 at all. Where are you at on Goddard getting traded at some point during the NFL draft? I think it'd
Yeah.
be during the draft. First off, I don't think it's going to be the next week until we get to the draft. But I'm like 80%. I think they're going to trade Dallas Goedert.
I do too. Yeah, I think they're going to trade him. I don't think it'll be night 1. It doesn't feel like that's a big blockbuster night 1 move. I think it would be probably night 2. Like day 3 feels a little bit late because then you're talking about like, okay, how much compensation? But if you don't have I don't know. I mean, I'm a hedge and a bet here. It's kind of like an unrealistic or unfair answer. But if it doesn't happen day 2, then it happens day 3. But that's like obvious. But I think probably day 2, like night 2, day 2, whatever.
Yeah. When wasn't it day 2? Whenever they traded, it's different. But whenever they traded for DeAndre Swift, was he a night 2? No, or was he a day 2? He was a day 2.
3.
Sorry, a day 3.
Yeah,
he was a 3, right? Okay.
Because I was actually on a plane.
And obviously AJ Brown was night 1 during the draft, so we haven't seen a day 2 trade like this. But yeah, I mean, unless they just accept a future, right? If they were to give you a 2025 fourth or a 2026 third, maybe they would take the 2026 third, and then they could do that on day 3, right? Versus day 2. So very interesting.
Possibility. We'll say that. IBH with 5. Appreciate that. Says if we trade back with the Giants or Browns, what would the expected return be in draft capital?
Yeah, I would need to see exactly where they would come, because it'd be, let's just say would the Browns give us their 34? Second rounder to go up? Yeah, so 34 plus what, right? A future third? A third rounder? Is that enough? I'd have to do the draft calculator.
We did. I mean, it's not completely accurate. I know this, but we did the mock draft, PFF mock draft last night and did that. So what was that? We were like trading, I think it was like 32 and I'm trying to find the clip because Anthony and I were messing around with it on a couple different drafts.
I'm looking at one of these mock draft value calculators while you look. And 32 versus 34, the point value, it's only a 60-point difference. So it's only like a 5% gain or loss based on where you trade. So 32 to 34, you're probably not getting another second rounder. You're probably getting a third or fourth or even a fifth round draft pick. It's only 2 picks is the thought process there. Yes, you get to go into night 1 and make your selection at the end of round 1. Yeah. But the next day, 2 picks later, or really 1 pick later, because 1 pick and then it's you, then you go. So let me know whenever you have that.
Okay,
I think it's not a lot.
Yeah, and again, this is mock draft, or this is PFF's mock draft, so they're not 100% accurate with the trades. But what we were doing was 34 of the Giants and 99. So they're 99, and then we were trading 32.
I would do that in a heartbeat.
We were trading in 32, and then I think we gave up 134, if I'm not mistaken. So moving up what is it, 35 spots later in the draft to swap the 2. Those were the considerations there. So it's just, if you're not just thrilled with your options there and you can afford being like, okay, there's a couple slots, we'll move back, then, it doesn't hurt because, you move up 30 different positions and say we've got a lot of guys who we brought in for top 30 visits that are projected in that range of the 70 to 100. But I don't think it'd be anything astronomical, I guess. If IBH, the question of, expected return in draft capital, we're not going like, oh my gosh, we have this, second round pick, third round pick for free, basically. It's moving up a little bit.
Right.
Not major.
Right.
Tyler with a 10. Appreciate that also. Says, don't know how legit the sources are, but multiple pages on X have said the Panthers are willing to move back from 8. You think there's anything there? That being said, I want Stark's certified dog.
Carolina is interesting, right? Because Carolina has a ton of needs. They're one of those teams that can really go best available. And so if they think that they could get their guy later on, then trading back makes sense. The problem is 8 to 32 is too much if you're Carolina, right? That's like, it would take a massive haul. You'd have to get the Eagles first rounder next year, I think, to even consider it. And I don't see Philadelphia doing that. So I don't, 8 to me is too high. I'm at like 17 would be the absolute highest possible Philadelphia could go And even that is way too much. Like, there's to me a 0% chance of going up to 15. There's like a 4% chance of going to 17. And then as you keep backing up, it gets exponentially greater, right? So 17 versus 25. 25 is like a 45% chance, right? 27 is like a 70%. Like, it's much easier. So
Oh yeah.
8 is way too high. Unless Abdul Carter were to be there, he's the only guy that Philadelphia could mortgage the farm on. Because I think there's an argument where you could give up your first this year and a first next year for Abdul Carter. They would do it. But he's not going to be there at 8 because someone else in the teens would have already leapfrogged and come up for him. So
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. Malachi Starks, as we've talked about earlier, he's a late 20s mock kind of guy right now because Evan Worry is clearly going to go ahead of him according to basically every single mock draft expert right now. Obviously things can change, but that seems to be the case. So Starks after 25, I think, is when he becomes kind of a reality. Very, very Nolan Smith-esque in terms of where projected in round 1. Most people had Nolan Smith after 25, even into the early second round, and Philly got him at 30. I think Starks is in a very similar situation where you get to 25, and then the Starks kind of sweepstakes, it really starts to begin.
Yeah. There was it's interesting. There's not as much I don't know how to word it. There's not as much like earlier picks, like teen hype, for Malachi Starks of saying like, okay, he's going to be in the teens for the picks,
Right.
or much earlier. Nolan, I think average was on that, but it was interesting because you'd go on some drafts or some mock drafts and he's getting picked by the Eagles even at 10. He's like, okay, hey, they didn't get Jalen Carter, they didn't get some others, so Nolan Smith's at 10.
Sure.
That's still a solid pick, maybe a little bit high, but then there were others that are okay. It's going much further back into the mid 20s. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to just see where teams see those because again, I think it's with Joel Klatt had said this in an interview. I've heard of multiple other analysts, like all the eye test, the tape, the football IQ, the knowledge, how he carries himself, the leader. I mean, all of that with Malachi Starks, there's not even a question at all, right? You don't walk into, as Joel Klatt said, you don't walk into Kirby Smart's defense as a freshman and become a starter there unless you know what you're doing and you're really good at it. So regardless of if you want to say, well, he's not exactly athletic, he's kind of losing a little bit whenever it comes to the other guys. Some do a lot better at field day and running the drills, and others are like, you know what, I need a little bit more amp for pads are on, we're playing now for real, and they get going. But you look at the plays that he's made, and I don't have near the question or the concern. There's a few, and I've saw comments on the last video that I did whenever I addressed it, like, after seeing that, I may want to stay off. I don't want another Jalen Reagor situation because, again, over the last 4 or whatever, since I think Anthony went back to the Reagor draft, if I'm not mistaken. It was not but beyond that. But I think since the Reagor draft, there's only been one player in those first couple rounds that has not kind of fit in the bill of being 8 or higher in the relative athletic score, and that player was Jalen Reagor. So
Jalen Reagor,
like, all right, well, we shouldn't be making those selections then. But I think he's different. I think he doesn't. I don't know. Hindsight's 20/20, but did not necessarily the Jalen Reagor.
Yeah.
Let's see. Christopher here with a 5. We appreciate that. Says, unless there is a run on quarterback, like y'all said, or that person is there, they really want us, or that is there that they really want, I still see us trading back. We really need to add a linebacker too. Go Birds. Go Birds.
Yeah, I talk a lot about Mel Kiper's mock draft, but it's the most recent one, and Jod Campbell is his pick for Philadelphia at 32 overall, linebacker from Alabama. And I was watching some of his film earlier today. I wouldn't hate the pick. I think he's a very good linebacker. I just really wonder if the linebacker is the need at 32, because in this mock draft, Ezeiruaku is the 33rd overall draft pick, the edge rusher out of Boston College. To me, getting another edge is more of a priority than getting another linebacker, because I really do feel like Vic Fangio can work with anybody, because Oren Burks came out of nowhere and was, plug and play whenever Nakobe Dean went out. And Nakobe Dean will come back, and you have Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and you get a linebacker in round 3, 4, 5, or 6, right? So I wouldn't hate a Campbell draft. I just don't see it as that big of a need. To me, it's edge rusher and safety are the two spots where you absolutely have to get somebody. Round 1 and round 2, edge rusher, safety. Either way, flip-flop them. Doesn't matter if it's Starks and then you get edge rusher later on, or if it's Ezeiruaku and you get safety later on. Either one works. But those, to me, are the almost a guarantee going to be your first or second round draft pick, unless we're missing something, and it's an offensive lineman, because they've met with so many, a lot of later round projected picks. But I just don't think linebacker is a first-round need. You need one in the draft, but not a first-rounder.
Yeah, I agree. They're not. I mean, yes, Howie values the linebacker because you paid Zach Bont, but it's not the same. I don't think of going like, oh, let's go ahead and Fangio. Hey, Fangio's big on linebackers. He does need them to perform. Does need them to play in his defense. But yeah, it's not as much of a. I agree. I don't see it as take him at 32. Maybe at 64. That still is probably early. I'm right there with you. Kobe King is a guy that was brought in. That's one that in the mock drafts we were able to take later. I mean, I think 161, I think, was whenever we were taking him on the one from last night. So, you just look at top 30 visits. That's a guy at Penn State, some familiarity there. It has had really good production, questioning sometimes in coverage, but, you never fully know. And if you can kind of cover that a little bit because you got the best one in football in Zach Bond, then, you kind of isolate the two, say, okay, this is more of our run stopper linebacker. If you don't, heck, they go dime a lot of times anyway. I mean, there are multiple instances where you have only one linebacker on the field. So, I think that's a later pick. Caden also just said Kobe King in the 5th. So there you go. That's the other.
Later on, too.
John M., dang, I'm late. Regular jobs, am I right?
Yeah,
yes, we know this is earlier. This is not the normal time, but
it's earlier.
Better for family schedule and everything there. So people that are joining late, hey, you're just watching the rerun of this. But yeah, it's scheduling changed just a tiny bit earlier for this one. JH with a 2. Appreciate that. Says, call me crazy, but I like Makuba as safety 1. Safety number 1 for Makuba.
Okay. He's talking about Andrew Makuba.
You are crazy.
Out of Texas.
Yes.
Yeah. Where
don't hate the player.
Like projected. What round is he?
Let's see. Where is he on? I want to say that he's always been like in the third rank. Like at 96, it feels like I'm always able to take him. Now, this is PFF.
He's the eighth overall safety prospect on ESPN.
Yeah.
It's Mukuba. He spelled it wrong, just FYI. So M-U.
He's not bad, but I mean, his number 1. That's I think
safety
I would call
1.
you crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Vic Fangio
we'll
signs
see how
off.
it plays out,
crazy, but we need Vic Fangio to sign off. So
that's an extreme. See, that's also though maybe not to the same type of quality here, but to me, if you were to go out there and look, hey, it's fine, you have your number 1 safety. That's one of those moves that, to use a fantasy football reference, let's say that you have, this is your sleeper pick, right? And I'm sure we've all played with fantasy football leagues with some of these people that they go up there for, they're the second, third pick of the draft, maybe even the first, but the second or third pick of the draft, they go put this name up there and they're like, what on earth are you doing? Like, you could have waited till the 4th round and taken this guy. Now, we're not saying wait that late for, player like, but that's one that, look, even if you believe he is safety 1, there's just, you can't really, I think, talk yourself into going like, yeah, let's just go ahead and take him at 32.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you're looking at 64 or trade up a little bit to make sure you get that guy. But I can respect it. There's so many different opinions at draft time, which I absolutely love the back and forth on, because somebody could get super adamant on a stance of like, no, that's my guy. And for example, Makuba here, but I don't think I could go as far as saying a safety number 1 for that spot.
Yeah.
Interesting thought though. I've still stuck to the Nick Emamori for me. It's maybe I'm leaning too much towards the athleticism factor, but a 10 of 10 on the RAS. Like,
he seems like the number 1 safety, definitely over Starks. I think most people would take him over Starks if given the option, but Starks is still a first rounder. But I think he is like, Cam Chancellor's name keeps getting brought up every single time I watch stuff on him, and you're like, that's a pretty big name to like compare to. Like, there are not a lot of Cam Chancellors that come out of the NFL draft, and when you hear that name, it's like a buzzword when it comes to safety.
Yeah,
so it's exciting.
Not too many. And we talk about guys with versatility, and not that others don't have it, but like in a Fangio defense, you got a guy who's we've said this before, like the size of a linebacker, can run and move like a corner, has safety skills, plays a safety position. Fangio could move him around wherever. You move him up into the box, you keep him at safety, over to the slot. Like, sure, there's a little bit of I think the knock was like the stiff hips and maybe not as much, but you're not asking him to be the corner. You're playing him as a safety. He has some versatility. And the size is just crazy. So in a day and age of this type of football, we've seen it with other players. Not saying that Cooper DeJean was the exact same, but some people seeing Coop come out are like, oh, well, there's no way he's going to play corner. Like, he's going to for sure have to play safety because he can't move. He can't keep up with receivers. And Slot was like, yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to as well because just the fluidity and, again, the quickness, I don't think that he has it. Like, that was just the knock on him. And we've seen that he played as the best graded slot corner this past season. So, yeah, if Fangio sees that and you got a guy with versatility who could play multiple positions and sees the field, I just don't think, or I don't see how you don't make that move. But anyway, that's my safety one. So
I agree.
For what it's worth.
Okay, there you go.
Lots of, understandably though, Jay, you did start a conversation in the chat, which is good, right? Just something to talk about. Lots of people that are arguing of not safety one, and several different guys that have been thrown out there. So
yeah,
to no surprise, we will say that. Let's see here. Do we have? Sorry, I saw one other question here, and I lost it for a second ago. Hang on. Harry was asking, because we're talking about edges. So other options in the draft, like whether you go safety edge safety. James Pierce has come up quite a bit. He was asking, are people still concerned with Pierce's attitude? Some of the reports of like whether he's the right answer for teams. I think that's why he's fallen in some mock drafts, or at least in the gradings there. But is it a big deal? I mean, Philly does their homework, so I guess that's ultimately for me what it comes down to is maybe other teams are. I think there's definitely validity to that because it's shared and reported that some believe that, but I don't know. It's like if I was another organization, sure, I might get concerned. But anytime that there's a player that's kind of like I don't know, maybe character issue, maybe something. If the Eagles take him, I'm like, cool, not concerned.
Yeah,
like that's just automatically something that I don't even get worried about because they do their due diligence, and I think it's a different culture here. So even if there's kind of like, well, you may need to keep them in line a little bit more, like they just fit right in. Just like, hey, here's the Eagles way, and this is what's expected of you, and you just kind of move on beyond it. So I don't know. I think there's probably for some teams, but if he were to happen to go to the Eagles, I'd be perfectly fine with it.
I agree. And there are really, as you look at, just the top edge rushers in this class, there are 8 that would make sense for Philadelphia. And obviously that includes Abdul Carter, but it's not happening. But you have both of the Georgia edge rushers. Then you have Pierce. I'm going off the ESPN list here. Then Shamar Stewart. Then Mike Green. Then Ezeiruaku. Scorton is in there as well. I mean, there are a bunch of edge rushers that are going to be there at 32. I mean, I think there's a very real chance that 5 of them are gone by the time you get to 32. But that means you still have 3, potentially 4 who are available. And so if Philadelphia wants an edge, they can stay at 32 and take whatever one is best there. It's just a matter of if that's what they want more than anything else. And obviously that would be my guess, but we got to wait and kind of see. But this is a very edge heavy and really a very safety heavy draft too, because there's a lot of guys in rounds 2 and 3 we've talked about. But those 2 spots of need for Philadelphia, there's no shortage of prospects that you could just have Philadelphia draft right now. And most of us would be like, hey, sounds good to me. Let's see what he can do.
Yes. Yeah. There's lots of other, and Nick Scorton is one. By the way, you mentioned a bunch of different names, but Nick Scorton's one of those that it feels like if you're not gonna trade up and not gonna reach, like Nick Scorton is, and I can't remember who had the percentages. That might have been, I think it was Eagles Eric. I think Eric was the one who had put that out there, but like the percentages based on, if you look at the kind of comparison of mock draft simulators and where the guys would fall, like taking the average for those, that there's like a 99% probability that Nick Scorton is available at 32. So it doesn't get like any better chances just based on those, hypothetical and tendencies there. But if he's still available at 32, there's not a reach or a trading up in that scenario. Whereas a lot of other guys, you're kind of like, well, they might be, they might not. Again, not to say that Nick couldn't get drafted ahead of another team, but I think that's the one guy that I would go, I'm not surprised at all if you're at 32 and he's still on the board. But, is that one of those similar scenarios where you say, okay, 32, do the Giants ask to trade up? And then you get something worked out there and you move back 2 spots and say, yeah, well, Scorton will still be available at 34. And then you take a player like him or some others in that area. So, yeah, we'll see. We're only a week away about. It's a week and a day. Basically a week away. Yeah. It's crazy. It's kind of flown up on us. It's nice when you win the Super Bowl.
We've
talked about this offline here, but it's like, you win the Super Bowl and you just kind of live on that high for a month, or even less really, because you kind of speed into the free agency period. But you're
Yep.
like, whoa, hey, free agency's here. Wow, that was fast. And then you kind of slowly trend off of that one, and then it's basically draft season is upon us. So it felt like we had. I could be wrong, but just the feeling of it, because last year was over a lot quicker. But it's like, man, we got into mock draft talk and draft coverage and player prospects and profiles and everything so much earlier that this year it's not that like I'm not prepared for it necessarily, but I do feel like it's a lot more of kind of clustered together and really having to go over a lot of players and film like in a much more condensed setting, because it was like I said, the playoff, Super Bowl, free agency, okay, bang, now we're into April and the draft is, 3 weeks away.
Totally agree.
We are now a week, so.
Totally agree. But another plug that we're going to be live for the NFL draft. And we actually have to test some of our draft stuff for the show. So if you watched our draft last year, which is a lot of new people have joined our channels, have subscribed to our channels since the NFL draft coverage last year. So a lot of you guys probably didn't, but we try and make it one of the best YouTube, non-ESPN productions. And so we have highlights and we have breakdowns and all sorts of stuff. We just got to test some sound levels and some highlight stuff here because we can't really test it unless we're live. So we figured we'll, try some things out and make sure it all works before. I'm sure we'll test more stuff next Wednesday Linc, the day before the draft, to make sure everything's working. So
for sure,
if you're staying with us this late, you get a little preview.
There we go. Yes, yeah, we can try to run this thing through. And a fun fact for people that may not have been aware, but last draft, I'm sure most people are because they were part of it. But last draft, we essentially broke the streaming software, I think, with all the production and editing and all that. So the goal is to not do that, which is why we're testing it here.
We'll see.
Yeah, I've got a couple clips. We could go ahead and play
just highlights.
And test out. Yeah, just highlights. But I got a couple.
We're
of
actually, and we might as well let people. We're testing to see if the music bed behind the highlight clips is the right level, so you guys hear it, but we also can talk, because when we play it on our ends, it sounds different than what it is on YouTube. So that's what we're trying to figure out.
So hopefully we don't blow anybody's eardrum, that it's too high, but also hopefully
maybe
it's
start
not
them
too little.
Start them smaller, and then work them up.
Okay, so. Well, we'll see if we can do this here. All right, first test. All right, and most realistic we're assuming here, but probably first pick in the draft, Tennessee Titans select Cam Ward.
Yes.
And so then this would be the clip here. Let's make sure that people can see. There we go. Okay, so now we can talk. That was original.
So it's very loud in my ears.
It's pretty loud. I'm gonna bring it down here and see where that one.
Okay.
I thought I had it pretty low, and it was not near low enough. I mean, I can hear you pretty good. I can also hear the music. I could bring it down more.
Yes.
Unless people think that it's.
Question is.
Let us know in the chat if it's good, if it's not good, if we're too quiet versus the music.
Right, that's what we're trying to figure out here. We want you to be able to hear us, but also hear the audio, so we can still hear you. But does it sound right though? Obviously, we'll review this on our own, but just let us know down below in the chat.
Yeah.
This sounds pretty. Music go down a little bit loud. That's
I think they're delayed.
I think you have it now.
Okay, I was gonna say I think they're delayed a little bit, so now we're getting into some people loud still. That's better. Good now, much better. Okay, I think that's the number. I've got it.
That's the number.
Yep, I've got it here set at a good old 26. Don't ask me why I picked that number. Felt like a good number for the Eagles.
So then pick another one, and obviously remember it cuts our voices out. It mutes us automatically. So you got to quickly unmute us once you hit it play. So let's just try another one here.
All right. So second selection in the NFL draft, Abdul Carter. It's possible.
Maybe Travis Hunter. I haven't built that graphic yet.
Probably, yeah. So we're just going to go with this one. All right. We'll try it again. See if, somebody said maybe a bit lower. So, we'll just see how this one plays out, because that last one was high, and then I moved it down. So let's see if this one sounds good. If not, I can move it down again. So here we go. Abdul Carter. And we are unmuted now, so now you can hear us.
Okay.
Abdul Carter.
Hopefully, this sounds good in my ears, so it's a matter of what it's going to sound like overall. So.
Yep. I can hear you well.
Okay.
Good clips, by the way. Thomas did edit this one, so for people wondering, this was Thomas going through and compiling some Abdul Carter highlights. Not too bad. Pretty clear.
Pretty exciting.
I don't think people realize sometimes of how difficult it is for college prospects and finding clips like this. Like, NFL is so easy. Like, you can find it anywhere, everywhere. But for college prospects, it can get difficult.
I'm seeing this is perfect, is what people are saying right now. So we might have it. We might have it. 26 might be dialed in pretty well. You can hear the music and stuff. So
perfect.
I think we're good. I think it all sounds good.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, that's
Sweet.
what we needed from everybody. So I think we'll
Thank
test
you,
this. We're testing it all on Wednesday to make sure it doesn't crash. So next live stream, we'll make sure that it all works.
Yeah.
And then have the draft. Hopefully, no issues. Because I think it crashed on night 2, though, right? I don't think it crashed on night 1.
Which is weird because night 1 was like, I mean, every single pick was like just throw everything at the streaming software, and it was beautiful. And then night 2 was, I think if we go back to the channel, I think there's like 3 different streams for rounds because it was like we'd go for like 20 minutes and it was like, oh, sorry, and then we come back to it. It's like go for a couple picks, then nope, cut off again. But yeah, we should be good.
Cool. All right. Well, then we're good to go. We appreciate everyone being our guinea pigs here and making sure that we are good to go.
Yes, thank you guys. Michael, appreciate it. Everyone. But yes, Michael said you're loud enough over the music. So 26.
That's exactly what we want.
And like I said, it's a very easy number to remember because I did pick it for Saquon. So, we get that reason. But all right, that works. Christopher did throw in a super chat. Apologies, Christopher, as we were doing that. So let me make sure and hit on the super chat here. Said, definitely agree not to go linebacker in the first. I'd go edge with the first pick, but we need linebacker for depth. Also, is corner early possible? Or the follow-up to that, I guess, is does Ricks take a leap this coming year? Yeah,
I mean, we both talked about Ricks on our shows earlier this week because there's some news out from Eagle reporters talking about how the Eagles feel about Eli Ricks. They're going to take a corner at some point. I think corner could be, obviously tight end is a dark horse early pick, but obviously if Goddard's not traded, then are they going to take one before they trade Dallas Goedert? Because then that kind of limits their ability to get more for Dallas Goedert. For me, obviously safety, and then or edge rusher, then safety, then linebacker. But I could see a scenario where a Trey Amos, right, is available at 32, and Philadelphia freaks out. They're like, we have to take Trey, throw him in there and whatever. But I'd be surprised to see a first rounder for corner. I'd be surprised to be a second rounder for corner, but probably third or fourth makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm maybe a little bit more on the possibility of a corner early, just because of those visits. And, I guess I'm like, okay, it's twofold because, again, as you mentioned, we talked about it earlier this week, but it's like you see those visits, you're looking at the roster. It has to tell you something of, okay, they're not totally sold on Kelee Ringo because you're not bringing in these guys that are projected late first round, early second round, unless you're going to say, okay, there's something there. But maybe it's everybody else falls off the board, perhaps their first round grades, if they see it that way and they say, okay, let's just trade back because there's a team that wants to, and you get someone early second round. But I'll just say this, like personally, I would be hyped if they were to get a Trey Amos or they were to get even Maxwell Harrison. That one, I think it's a little bit of a reach. Depends, but a little bit of a reach if you're taking him at 32. You could probably wait, but you don't have, like, 64 is too late. So then you're playing the game of, do you trade up, do you trade back? But I don't know. If it's not one of those two, then absolutely. Like, there's not a reason to take another corner. For one, they haven't met with 100%. Any of those others, but there's not a reason you just take somebody else later. So we'll see. I don't mind the idea. You say, hey, let's go ahead and just add one more to the corner, take another guy, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and insert Trey Amos, maybe. Like, almost every scout, if you look at the scouting reports and the reading up on him that I've done as well, it's like almost everybody's saying CB2 is his floor. So, like, that's what the Eagles need. They exactly need a CB2. So if CB2 is his floor and the potential to be a CB1 lockdown corner, I mean, imagine if he ends up blooming into that and you're saying, okay, now you have literally 2 stud lockdown corners and Cooper DeJean as your lockdown slot. I mean, it's terrible. It's a nightmare for other teams that are going to match up with the Eagles because they got their secondary. We've got the youth on the defensive line that they have, the core there.
Right.
I could certainly be talked into that. We'll say that.
Okay.
JD, a midday live. Yes, sir. That is right. Just about to wrap up here, though, but you can watch it back. Said, what did you miss and what did you win? Well, unfortunately, you did not win anything. We do have other giveaways.
Did not win anything.
Upcoming. So for the draft night and everything else, for people hanging out with us, just another reminder, we'll be live on Thursday and Friday. So, and there you go. There's one of the helmets. The variety of signatures. I've just got the the coop. I've only got one signature on this one, but
Yeah, it's still a pretty big one. It's still a pretty big one.
it's
I know they're the same way because we both give away so many helmets. But like,
yeah.
mine sits right over here, and I see it every time I walk into my studio, and I'm like, man, that would look so nice just to stay here forever. But it's got to go to someone.
Yeah,
So
we give it out to somebody else. I know, but we should hopefully have some more after the draft. We'll say I've not gotten confirmation from the Eagles yet. We're supposed to for the Philly dog visit at the NovaCare. So for those people also wondering, because I know we've teased it and we've mentioned it before, it is going to happen. We've confirmed it that it will happen. Just the dates we don't have. So for subscribers and members and wondering, it is going to happen. We just got to get confirmation from the Eagles, and they're busy, so understandable. They're getting
they're just trying to get
ready.
all the Philly dogs on the same schedule, which I'm sure is very difficult. So
I can only imagine.
It's got to be difficult. There's like 5 of them, so it's gonna be good.
Yes, yeah. So, but we will keep everybody posted as always. Like I said, just about a little bit over a week away from the draft. We will of course have another Wednesday hangout, Wednesday night stream before the draft for next week to officially prep and plan and test out some of the streaming software and everything. But for those, like I mentioned, you're watching it late, catching it later, you can rewind, cover all the latest news, topics of the draft and everything there. But otherwise, appreciate you guys as always. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe on your way out, and go Birds.
Go Birds.